just that. But all right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of OC and TJ. A very chilling one because it's literally freezing everywhere. I mean, it's 45 degrees in Florida. It's 20 degrees in the Northeast. It's freaking snowing in Charleston and Tallahassee. But you know what? It's never too cold for some football. And for this episode, I realized, you know what? I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of talking to myself and stammering. So I figured, you know what? Why don't I just call up an old buddy of mine and just ask my boy Tyler O'Donoghue to join onto the show. Brother, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Colin. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So before we get into the conference championship previews, which is pretty much what everyone is here for, we got a lot of juicy drama taking place with certain head coaches and general managers being, selected or being hired and being, interviewed and whatnot. And one actually reconsidering their opportunity to join a team instead of staying with their respective organizations. So we already talked about Mike Vrabel being hired as the head coach of the New England Patriots. I pretty much said that, listen, it's high risk, high reward. You know he can change the culture, but if you don't overhaul the roster and if you don't actually address what needs to, get fixed, then it's going to completely implode. But New England also hired two new coordinators. They hired Terrell Williams to be their defensive coordinator. He was the assistant D-line coach, or he was the assistant head coach, I should say, at Detroit. I think he worked with the defensive line, if I'm not mistaken. And then offensively, we brought back Josh McDaniels. Yay. Ooh. Oh, good God. Yep, we're literally the San Antonio Spurs of football because all we do is just hold on to the memories. We want to live in the past because we can still actually compete for a playoff spot. And they don't realize that, no, they're not there anymore. And it's just, I don't want to be the freaking Spurs. I mean, yeah, Drake May might be the next Wemby, but he has a freaking terrible team around him. Not so much this year, but you know what I mean. But what did you think of? What were your first thoughts when you actually saw this? Were you like laughing hysterically, or were you like, you know what, they actually they might be onto something?
No, I mean, I don't know. I feel like you guys are onto something. I mean, I feel like the Mayo hire was kind of just a spur of the moment thing. I think you guys wanted somebody that the fans could kind of get behind. I don't know, but in my opinion, I didn't think that was the greatest hire. But hey, I mean, you did it. It didn't work out. I'm glad they're moving on. And I don't know. I think some of the hires they've made have been great. So I'm kind of excited to see how your guys' team kind of shapes through the draft. I'm interested to see who you guys draft.
I know.
And just, I don't know, kind of see what these new guys coming in for you can do, because you guys have been, I don't want to say a poverty franchise, but you've had about, how many down years? A couple down years?
Yeah. I mean, we went 4-13 the last 2 years. And then, a few years ago, we went 8-9, but it kind of was like a fluky 8-9 because all we did was beat up bad opponents and we didn't make the playoffs because A, we couldn't beat anybody legitimate, and two, we had Matt Patricia and Joe Judge running our offense. I'm like, really? This is what championship contending teams try to do?
Well, I feel like that's been your guys' biggest problem. Like, you've had good players. It's just your coaching hasn't been great. So I think you guys are just in like a stalemate where like you're waiting for that one coach to click, kind of like Dan Quinn with the Commanders. You're waiting for that one coach to come in and just click your team and just instantly that he's the guy for you. So I think fingers crossed for you. I hope Vrabel's the guy for you guys.
So do I. And I hope you're right because, I mean, you see it with Washington. It's not just with Dan Quinn either. I mean, Dan Snyder is freaking gone. His stench is no longer rotting that organization. They bring in Josh Harris, who definitely tries to be hands-off with his football, with the way he handles things. He just lets the guys that know the sport do their job. So, I mean, you've seen that with the Sixers and with the Devils, and now you're seeing it with Washington, and it's paid off for the most part. So I'm hoping that the Patriots, head into that same direction. But at the same time, it's like, to me, it's not so much about trying to find the perfect coach. It's just whether or not ownership is ready to take a step back. Because here's the thing. When Robert Kraft hired Belichick and they had Tom Brady and they went on that whole dynastic run for 20 years, he didn't have to do anything. He just sat back. He just let nature take its course because he knew those were the two guys that were going to take them over the top and compete for championships year in and year out. And you've seen the success. Now that Tom Brady left, ever since he left, the Krafts have been really more hands-on, even with Belichick still there for a few years, because, I mean, look how it's gone so far. 2020, you signed Cam Newton at, like, the last minute. And it starts up decent. I mean, they go 2-1, but then he gets COVID and they go 7-9. The next year, they draft Mac Jones. They make him the unanimous starter and cut Cam Newton after the preseason. And, it looks like everything's going to go great. They're 9-4. You're the best team in the whole NFL. And then the bye week happens and they just collapse and get demolished at Buffalo. Next year, they go 8-9 and miss the playoffs. And I already talked about it. 2023, Belichick's team just completely falls apart. And Robert Kraft's like, all right, enough is enough. We're moving on. Let's actually appoint Jerome Mayo as the successor. The way we planned for it to happen, which was I want to say 3 years before they moved on for Bill Belichick, maybe 4. But the point is, they put Jerome Mayo in the worst situation possible. They predictably had a terrible season. He gets axed, and now they put in Mike Vrabel to say, oh, you know what? He's the savior. He's going to get us back to a championship level. We're going to make sure that, everything just, works out from there. But here's my thing. You got to overhaul that offense because you still don't have anybody that could be a game-changer receiver. The O-line's a wreck. Madre's got a case of the fumbles, and we have no pass rush. So, you know what? I just want to know what they were going to be able to do in free agency because you got the most cap space in the NFL. There's no excuse to, just stay pat and not do anything. And you got the 4th overall pick, and the 3 teams ahead of you need quarterbacks. So you're literally, I wouldn't say you're playing with house money, but I don't think you could ask for a better situation. So we'll see what happens from there. But speaking of teams heading into the right direction, the Chicago Bears and the New York Jets stole the 2 coordinators from the Detroit Lions. Chicago got Ben Johnson, and the Jets got Eric Glenn. Funny enough, Aaron Glenn was a player for the New York Jets back in the 90s. So he's pretty much in the same situation as Mike Vrabel. And Ben Johnson is now joining forces with Caleb Williams. Hopefully this curse ends once and for all because I'm tired of this Bears offense not going anywhere and for this quarterback, curse to stay alive because it's the notion is that if you're a quarterback and you go to Chicago, your career is pretty much over. So hopefully Ben Johnson turns things around there. So, grade these hires on a scale of 1 to 10. What would you say?
Interesting. I feel like the Ben Johnson. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I give that an 8. I think for the Bears, it's pretty good. I think they're an up and coming team in the NFL. Especially like you said with Caleb Williams. So I mean, I'm super interested to see kind of what happens with that dynamic between him and Caleb Williams, and I hope it's good for their sake. Honestly, even though I'm a Ravens fan, I hope it's good for them because the Bears, kind of like the Patriots, they're in that little stale era right now. Exactly. So I think they deserve some success. And then with Aaron Glenn, I love him personally. I love him. I mean, especially watching him with the Lions this season, just the way he handled that defense when they were banged up. I know in the playoffs they didn't play as good as they could have, but I mean, without those injuries, they were one of the best defenses in the league, if not the best, I think, in my opinion. So Aaron Glenn, huge fan, took that franchise from the bottom to the top, obviously along with the rest of the coaches there in Detroit. But I would probably give that's probably a 9 or 10 out of 10 for me. I'm just a big fan of him and how he goes about football.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you. I think with the Ben Johnson, I agree with you. I'll give it an 8 because that Ben Johnson is the brightest offensive mind that was available. I think he wanted to go to Chicago all along, but he just wanted to play the process out. And he actually threw some shots at Matt LaFleur saying that he actually enjoyed beating him twice. So get your popcorn ready because that's going to be fun. But, I think, listen, Ben Johnson, he cares about the players. He's going to definitely change the whole direction of that offense because you got Caleb Williams. You got a decent receiving core. The O-line's improved. Or actually, no, I want to say the O-line's improved because it got Caleb Williams sacked the most times out of anybody this year. But that if anybody can turn it around, it's Ben Johnson. And then that defense is not – the defense is a relatively above average unit. So that he's not going to try to dramatically change that unit whatsoever. The Aaron Glenn one, I got to be honest, I'm going to give this an 8. And the reason why I give it an 8 is because of the situation that he's in. I think that – listen, I don't think the defense is going to be as bad as it was when Robert Saleh got fired. Because when Robert Saleh was there, that defense was one of the best in the league. When Jeff Ulbrich had full control of it, it took a dip. And the team partly suffered as a result of it. Obviously, you had Aaron Rodgers and his decline being a big reason why, but you also saw that the defense wasn't meeting the standard. So hopefully Aaron Glenn can turn things around because you got the players, you got the pieces. I mean, Jermaine Johnson's coming back from a torn Achilles. Quentin Williams is still one of the best defensive tackles. You really got two elite linebackers in Quincy Williams and what the heck is his name? Sherwood. And then the secondary, that you have a lot of playmakers like Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed and Michael Carter II. Hopefully all three of them are retained in some capacity because Carter already got an extension, but I think DJ Reed is a free agent, so we'll see what happens from there. But the other reason why I give it an 8 is because who's the quarterback going to be? Is Aaron Rodgers going to retire? Is he going to walk away in free agency? Is he going to stay with the Jets? We don't know. So that's the one thing that I think New York has to figure out quickly. And they don't even have a general manager yet. So we got to figure out, all right, who's calling the shots? Who's going to make sure that the holes are filled? And more importantly, how are we actually going to return to respectability? What moves are we going to make? Because if Rodgers is back, that might mean Devontae might come back. And that might cause a little bit of frustration for Garrett Wilson, but we'll see. I think you have to trust in the youth. You got to trust in the foundation. And it would be easy to say, well, the Jets got to draft somebody, but who else besides Cam Warner, Shadur Sanders is going to be the guy that is immediately going to turn things around? Because Quinn Ewers and Jalen Milroe, they were decent in college, but they're not. I don't know how well they're going to be in the NFL. So that's my stance on it. The Las Vegas Raiders, they chose a new general manager, John Spytek, the assistant general manager for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it's kind of funny that they chose a guy named Spytek considering that Tom Brady's their owner, and he got accused for the spy. Well, it wasn't him that got accused; it was Belichick, but just like the freaking coincidence. But John Spytek, he was Brady's college teammate at Michigan. They knew each other from their time with the Buccaneers, and that's not to say that Spytek, got there out of nepotism or just because of bias, because he has an impressive track record. He's worked with Gary Kubiak, Mike Holmgren, Andy Reid, John Elway, obviously Jason Light with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Bruce Arians. So he definitely has an impressive track record. So I'm just hoping that the Raiders, choose someone that's going to be, not just a motivator, but knows the X's and O's, that actually knows, okay, this is the quarterback we need. These are the running backs that we got to look out for. These are the offensive linemen that we got to try to go after. And then defensively, we got to figure out who the hell is going to help out Max Crosby, because if he's not on the field, it's not as good as, when he is on there. So I just wanted to go on a quick take there because I know general manager hires, they're definitely more complex to kind of break down and analyze, just because you don't know what's going to happen, because you're an assistant GM, but you're not really the one that has the final say. So,
right.
And then last but not least, well, I want to say last but not least, because there are going to be more coming in the next few weeks. But Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he was the top guy for the Jaguars head coach, but he backed out of consideration because he didn't really see himself working together with Trent Baalke, whom the Jacksonville Jaguars just fired yesterday. I'll get into that in just a bit. And then when Jacksonville fired Baalke, they called Liam Cohen up to see if he'd reconsider, and talks started to, resurface. And now he's in the facility, potentially working on a new deal. And the extra twist is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers haven't been able to contact him, and he's been quote unquote ghosting him. Like, he's not answering their calls or returning their texts. So things are getting very dicey in the state of Florida. But what were your thoughts when you first heard about this?
Yeah, I mean, that was just kind of surprising, especially from a grown man. That's something that we do in high school as little kids, ignoring your parents or whatever they're saying, not text them back.
Exactly.
But I don't know. I thought it was super interesting. I mean, obviously there's some tension going on. There's probably something we don't know that happened in Tampa Bay, with how their season ended. I don't know if there was a bunch of turmoil or something after their season was over. I know it was a frustrating.
I mean, they were willing to make him the highest paid coordinator in football.
Right.
So I don't know if it was about tension, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, you just pretty much said what I was about to say too. I mean, they made a good offer to him, and it's hard for me to, kind of justify why he wouldn't take that. But then again, with maybe he wants a new opportunity somewhere else, staying in Florida, gets a chance to maybe play them and, get some revenge, as with him at the helm, so.
Right.
I don't know. I hate to say it because I'm from Florida and, I kind of have a soft place in my heart for the Bucks, but
right. So do I.
I think it's time to just, sever the ties, whatever, let him go. You don't need him. You'll find somebody better. And, the Jaguars is a new start. So, it's a win-win, I think, in my book for both franchises.
I want to go so far as to say a win-win. And there are multiple reasons why. I don't have a problem with Liam Cohen taking the job for the Jaguars. I think he deserved it. He got an outstanding season out of Baker Mayfield. They have one of the best offenses in football when they were at full strength. He got a 1,000-yard season out of Bucky Irving, who's been a freaking gem for that football team. And obviously you got Mike Evans continuing that 1,000-yard streak. So a ton of props go to Liam Cohen. But the problem that I have was how all of this transpired. And this is more of an indictment on Jacksonville than it is with Tampa by a long shot. Yeah. Because let's put this in proper perspective. You fired Doug Peterson after the final game of the season, yet you decide to keep Trent Baalke around for whatever reason, even though he has literally proven to you year after year that he is not a deserving general manager. I mean, you saw his track record in San Francisco. He literally ran Jim Harbaugh out of town, and then he proceeds to run that team into the ground. They promote a patsy defensive line coach, really a puppet, to be the main guy in charge. They go 5-11. The next year, they fire him, hire Chip Kelly, and they go 2-14, and Baalke is predictably shoved out the door. And then Jacksonville, you come in with Urban Meyer. We know how that turned out. The next year, they bring in Doug Peterson. They make the playoffs. And so things are starting to get better. Baalke's starting to make a little bit of a better name for themselves, even with the second-round loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. But then everything just went downhill from there. I mean, 2023, they go 8-3. Then they lose 5 of their final 6 games to miss the playoffs. And then this year, everything just came crashing down. 4-13 season. The head coach is gone. The general manager stays around. And not only does it force Ben Johnson or force Liam Cohen to back out, but it also forced Ben Johnson to back out of consideration. Why? It wasn't because they didn't think that they could turn the program around. It's because of Baalke, because they didn't know if they could work with him or not. And so Shahid Khan, the owner, who is as complacent as an owner as I've ever seen in the NFL, realizing this at the very last second, for whatever reason, finally decides, you know what, maybe now it's time I should fire Trent Baalke, because if it's cost me 2 potential head coaching candidates that I know could help this team get back to where it needs to be in order to be successful, then you know what? I actually might be doing something that's, worth it. So it's not a total lost cause for the Jaguars, because, I mean, the reports are saying that he's in the building and they're working on a deal. But even then, if you miss out on Cohen, then maybe you could get someone like Robert Saleh, who's, we don't know where he's going to land up. He could be with the Cowboys. He could be with the Raiders. Hell, he could be back in San Francisco as their defensive coordinator. We don't know. But I wouldn't say it's a total win-win because just of how everything was handled. I mean, Jacksonville realizing until it was too late that Trent Baalke was the problem. And then even though you got the head coach you wanted, it could have been a lot easier for you if you just realized what your freaking issue was. So, other news, I mean, the Texans let go of their team president. Already talked about Aaron Glenn being hired as the Jets head coach, which, by the way, thank God they chose Aaron Glenn, because if they went with Rex Ryan, I definitely would have been on a huge laughing brigade. Yeah. The funny thing was, I'm actually surprised the Jets didn't hire him, because I feel like he was the only one that was actually begging to take the job. Because, I mean, Rex Ryan, he hasn't been in the league in almost a decade. And Aaron Glenn, I mean, I think one of the biggest reasons why he took the Jets head coaching job is because there was a snowstorm in New Orleans. He was about to get interviewed there, but they had to set those interviews back because of the storm. So it just gave the Jets a bigger opportunity to actually get the guy and not let him leave the building. So, yeah, that's all I got to say there. And then Bengals, they're hiring Al Golden to be their defensive coordinator, who is just with Notre Dame. Indy's hiring Lou Anarumo. I don't know how that's going to work out because, I mean, his defenses have not been better over the last 2 years. And I feel like you're in the same situation in Indianapolis as you were in Cincinnati. Solid pieces, but weak secondary, and the scheming's a little bit questionable. And what makes it worse is Indianapolis doesn't have a reliable quarterback. So, but anyways, let's divulge from the head coaching and GM fiascos. Let's actually talk some playoffs and talk about the teams that really matter. Beginning with the NFC Championship, the third meeting between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. The Cinderella story lives on, and it just makes the Dallas Cowboys look even more pathetic because they haven't been to a conference championship game in 30 years, yet the Commanders are playing for a chance to make it to the Super Bowl. That's just freaking mind-blowing in and of itself. But let's actually figure out where these teams began and what led them to this point. Let's start with Washington because their win was definitely more surprising. Yeah. Upsetting the number 1 seed in the NFC, Detroit Lions, with a 45-31 victory. The defense forced 5 turnovers. Jaden Daniels threw for close to 300 yards with a couple touchdown passes. And the Lions, after a 15-2 season, are one and done in postseason play, and now both their coordinators are gone. Initial reaction.
Oh my gosh. I mean, for what a game. I personally, one of the best games of the year I've ever watched, first of all. And second of all, I just feel bad for Lions fans. I mean, what a horrible way to end a historic season. I mean, from going to what they were a couple of years ago to now under their new head coach, I mean, or their fairly new head coach. I mean, what a sad way to go. And props to Jaden Daniels. He played the game of his life. Obvious rookie of the year, for the NFL. I mean, one of the best quarterbacks in the history of that franchise. So good for them. And, just super sad for all the Lions fans. I mean, disappointing way to end the year.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. First of all, I don't think anybody should take away what Washington did. We all knew that this was going to be a close game. Both offenses were going to put up a lot of points. But one of the things that I said last week is that the one team that makes the tiniest mistake, that's going to determine the outcome. And I thought it would be Washington because on their opening drive, they try to go for it on 4th and 1, and they try to run some idiotic trick play where Mariota runs the sneak and then tries to pitch it back to Daniels. Yeah. That was just a ridiculous play call. I don't know what the heck Cliff Kingsbury was thinking. And it led the Lions offense to just walk down the field. They go up 7-0. And then the defense holds Washington to a field goal. And I'm thinking, okay, you're going to go up 14-3. You're going to cruise your way to a victory. Everything's going to be fine. And then the strip sack happens. And I'm like, oh, God, here we go. And then both teams score touchdowns on their next couple possessions. And then Jared Goff throws a pick 6 to Quan Martin. And Tom Brady literally pointed out on the broadcast, you got Sam Laporta wide open in the flare, and you decide to be a little too aggressive and force a pass to Tim Patrick in a tight coverage. The pass is overthrown, and the blocks are there. And all of a sudden, you're down 24-14. And I'm like, oh, good God, this is not going to go well. Fortunately, they were able to make it, it was a 10-point game at halftime, but then they made it a 3-point deficit in the third quarter. Mm-hmm. And then, just the 12 men on the field penalty on the next drive that allowed Washington to go up by 10 points again. I mean, Tom Brady's literally screaming timeout, timeout, timeout. And then the flag gets thrown, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, you got to be freaking kidding me. And that was on 4th down. 4th and 2. And then the minute I knew it was over was when Jameson Williams tried to throw that freaking pass down the sideline. I'm like, how in the world did you think that guy was going to come open for the pass? And sure enough, Mike St. Russell, he lowballs it the whole way. Washington goes up by 17 points. And then the Lions had some desperation scoring drive in the final minutes, and they throw a pick on that one. And I'm just like, what is freaking happening? How is their season ending like this? If it was a close ball game that came down to a walk-off field goal, I would have respected it more. But 21 points off of 5 turnovers. And if you subtract that, it's wait, the Lions are they're going to win by 7 points. You would have won the ball game.
Yeah.
So, give the Washington Commanders credit. They were opportunistic on defense. Their offense was virtually almost unstoppable. I think they only punted, once the entire night. The first time they punted in 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks. So give Washington credit for making the most out of their opportunities. But this was the year that Detroit had to win it, and they failed miserably because now Ben Johnson's gone, Aaron Glenn is gone, one of your top assistants is gone, and now you're pretty much starting over from scratch again. So you're not like completely rebuilding, but you're just in a situation where it's going to take an aggressive offseason and another amazing regular season for you guys to regain some respectability. But even then, it's like, I don't know what type of deal Bobby Lane made with the devil for the Lions to not have a single Super Bowl win or to have not have another championship win since he left the team. But dear God, this is just, like you said, you got to feel bad for the fans because they've been waiting for years to have a season like this, and you don't even win a playoff game. Oh my God. Yeah, that's just devastating. But let's move on to the Philadelphia Eagles. They had a more predictable victory, depending on how you want to look at it. They beat the Los Angeles Rams 28-22. It was a very close ball game, which is very shocking, but it was more of a defensive battle than anything, despite the score. Jalen Hurts got sacked 7 times, only threw for 128 yards. A.J. Brown only caught 2 passes, but the Rams struggled more. I mean, Matthew Stafford got sacked 5 times. They turned the ball over twice. And when they had a chance to pull off the near impossible, they couldn't convert on 4th down, and they turned the ball over on down. So, First thought, what were your thoughts with this game and how it played out?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you said, kind of close game down to the wire, which was kind of unexpected. I think a lot of people had Philly by a lot in this game. But I kind of was talking to my buddies before this game. I think the Rams were a very underrated team. You know, when they're clicking on all cylinders, that offense is pretty dangerous. I think they have a top running back, Kyron Williams. I think he's a top 10, maybe if not top 5 running back in the league.
I'll go with 10.
Controversial, but you know, they got some good receivers. Cooper Kupp had, you know, kind of a weird year, but Puka is a bright spot for them. But yeah, it was another Saquon Barkley kind of game, you know, where he breaks out another 70-yard touchdown run out of nowhere and then scores another touchdown.
70-yard touchdowns.
Like, it's unbelievable how teams can't stop him and how powerfully he runs. But super iconic how he's running in the snow, about to score a touchdown, and he's batting his hand on his helmet as he's running into the end zone. But
yep.
I mean, if you're a Rams fan, I mean, heartbreaking way to lose. I mean, you have a chance to tie the game in the last few minutes, or at least have a chance to tie it with a 2-point conversion on that last drive. But the pick by Stafford, you know, kind of sucked. But Rams, I mean, it was a great season for them. Honestly, I think they over-exceeded their expectations.
Yeah.
And I think they found themselves a true quarterback in Stafford who, you know, could lead them maybe hopefully next year to a playoff run with some of these young guys they got coming up.
Well, who knows if Matthew Stafford's going to be on the team, because apparently he might contemplate retirement. At least that's what his wife said. So
yeah, I saw that.
We'll see what happens when it comes to him, but who knows? He's still playing at a really high level, and I don't see why he wouldn't be able to come back. So We'll see what happens there. Yeah, Saquon Barkley was pretty much the biggest reason why the offense even had a pulse, because like you said, that 72-yard touchdown where he's just banging his helmet and where he's just off to the races, I thought that was going to be the dagger, because he already had a 62-yard touchdown earlier in the game, and then the last meeting he had like a couple 70-yard touchdowns, and he goes off for 270 in that one. So I'm thinking, okay, it's pretty much right. We're pretty much right back to where we were in November, and the Rams put up a strong fight early on, but they just made too many mistakes to get the job done. But no, the Rams score a touchdown to make it a 1-possession game, and all you got to do is pick up a couple first downs and make the Rams burn all 3 of their timeouts to run out the clock.
Yep.
Well, they got the first part done. The Rams burn all 3 of their timeouts, but it's 2nd down and 11, and you roll out Jalen Hurts to the left to nowhere. Like, nobody was open. I didn't see any design to the play. It did not fool anybody, especially to Kobe Turner, who came up with the huge sack. And all of a sudden, the Rams get the ball back, and I'm thinking this is Atlanta all over again. Yep. You get too cute with the play calling, and if you somehow did lose that football game, Nick Sirianni was going to get absolutely shredded by everybody. The media, the players, the coaches, the fans. he would have had no sympathy or no mercy whatsoever. But Eagles defense being the number one unit and, being the backbone of this football team, they got the job done. Even with that amazing sideline catch from Puka Nacua, they didn't let the Rams reach the end zone. They got the fourth down stop they needed. They sacked Matthew Stafford 5 times. And then earlier in that game, they forced a couple fumbles, and it led to 2 field goals, but it could have been the 2 field goals that the Rams might have needed to continue this game even longer, because Jalen Hurts got dumped 7 times, one of them in the end zone for a safety that made it a 1-point game. But it's just Rams couldn't make the most out of their chances. And the Eagles, they had Saquon Barkley. They just used old school football. Defense, great running game, and the quarterback, all he had to do was just not screw it up. I don't know if that's going to be a sustainable formula heading into this week or if they make it to the Super Bowl, but anything could happen. If Peyton Manning could get dragged to the finish line by that Broncos defense in 2015, I don't see why the same wouldn't happen in Philadelphia. But let's head into this conference championship preview. Who you got? What do you see happening?
Gosh, this is tough. I
know.
Part of me, if you look at both teams, the Eagles obviously, are definitely the more talented team with the skill players they have. But for me, especially watching that Lions game with the Commanders, I feel like I was waiting for Daniels to make a mistake, and he just didn't, which surprised me. For a rookie quarterback to have that much composure was really impressive to me. So it's tough because you have Philly, who's playing at home. They're super comfortable playing in those temperatures and the snow, obviously. So you have that part, and then you have the Commanders, who are red hot, have the hottest quarterback in the league, arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. And they might not have the same skill players the Eagles do, but it's hard to fade the hot team in the playoffs, because in the playoffs, anything can happen. Whoever's playing the best at that time is going to win. So, in my opinion, I think I'd have to take the Commanders here. I know it's in Philly. If you look at the games they played throughout the year, the first one they played, it was kind of close all the way up until the fourth quarter when, Saquon, got hot. And then the second meetup they had, Hurts was injured and Pickett was playing most of that game. So, again, you can't really conclude that game. And then the Commanders threw a game when he passed in the last drive. But you can't really look at that game and compare it to now. So, you really have an even matchup right here. I think this game, again, is going to come down to, the last kind of drive. Whoever has that ball last is ultimately probably going to win this game for me. So, should I do a score prediction too?
Go ahead.
Score prediction. I'm going to go kind of a low-scoring game. I'm not sure what the weather's like, but I'm going to go 21-20 Commanders on a game-winning field goal.
I can see that. Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. I agree with you. I think the Washington Commanders can pull this off. And it's not because that I don't think that, Saquon's not going to have a great game. I think he's going to do everything he can to get this Eagles offense on track. But if you remember in the last meeting, it was in Washington, D.C. The Commanders won that game 36-33. And yes, Jalen Hurts didn't play in the second half because of a concussion. I get it. He played a big reason as to why the offense couldn't really get more than field goals on the board in the second half. But in the final 30 minutes, Saquon Barkley got the ball 16 times, and he only picked up 28 yards. Now, he finished that game with 150 yards, but 122 of them came in the first half. So that Washington is going to do everything it can to try to shut down the run, and they have the pieces to do it. It's just a matter of time. It's just got to be able to – the X factor for me is what's Jalen Hurts going to do? He had that big knee injury in the second round last week. That kind of limited his mobility, and it was a big reason as to why he didn't really do much throwing the football. Obviously, you have Saquon Barkley, who's a generational talent, but A.J. Brown only caught 2 passes. Devontae Smith didn't have that big of a game, nor did Dallas Goedert. So, and the offensive line gave up 7 sacks. And a lot of that was because Jalen Hurts couldn't move in the pocket. So I think that's a big factor. I think when you look at it from that standpoint, you got to be able to figure out, okay, if the Eagles offense is going to stall out time and time again, they're giving Jaden Daniels too many opportunities to pull off a lot of scoring drives of his own, because not only has he been money on third down so far this postseason, he has been almost perfect on fourth down. Obviously, they had a few stops or a few failed attempts over the last couple of weeks, but there were a few more that, made the biggest difference in the ball game. I mean, in Tampa Bay, they went for on fourth down. They got the lead on a touchdown. And then against Detroit, 12 men on the field, you have the touchdown that allows you to go ahead by double digits, and you run away with that victory. So I think the reason why the Washington Commanders are going to win is this. I think they got the pieces to slow down Saquon Barkley, but more importantly, to your point, if you give Jaden Daniels the ball last in the final minutes with a chance to win the game and have a chance to take their team to the Super Bowl, then you better watch out, because even against a vaunted Eagles defense, he is definitely going to make opponents pay for letting him get his opportunity. And he did that the last time they went up against each other. Even with 5 turnovers, he threw his 5th touchdown pass of the day that won the game. So I'm going to go with a little bit of a higher scoring game, but just like you, I don't think it's going to be too high scoring of a finish, because, it's in Philly. Who knows what the weather's going to be like, but I got the Commanders winning 27-24. All right, and then last but not least, we got the AFC Championship game in Arrowhead Stadium between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. They're back at it once again. The rivalry continues on. Obviously, before we make our picks, let's figure out how these two teams got here. Let's start with the Kansas City Chiefs, because I think we got to save the best for last. Kansas City, they predictably beat the Houston Texans 23-14. They pretty much took care of business, and just like the other two teams that moved on, they made the least amount of mistakes, while the Houston Texans, just got in their own way in all 3 phases, even with a couple of bogus, unnecessary roughness calls. But what were your thoughts watching this football game? Were you surprised? Were you disappointed? What were your emotions like?
A little bit surprised, but not really. I mean, I figured the Chiefs would win pretty handily. I think Mahomes and Kelsey are getting hot, which is always scary, especially in the playoffs when they have that connection together. They're pretty tough to stop. But I think on the Texans side of the ball, I think Tank Dell being out kind of hurt them a little bit. I think they're still kind of dwelling on that injury a little bit. You can tell their offense struggled a little bit. Robert Woods has been kind of a hot spot in his absence, but, it's Robert Woods. He's not Tank Dell. He's not going to be able to fill in that role.
He's not what he used to be.
Exactly. He's not what he used to be at all. And Nico's great and all, but when you have an injured offense like that, I mean, double teaming Nico is probably the smartest option. And I don't know how many times the Chiefs did it, but I mean, Nico had a decent game, but you can't have one receiver doing everything for you. And it was pretty easy to stop if he's not going off every game. And Mixon had a kind of a weird game too. Throughout the regular season, he was almost unstoppable. I mean, multiple games with 2 or more touchdowns, and it just kind of seemed that he went quiet kind of in the playoffs a little bit, which was kind of odd. I mean, he was catching a lot of passes, which they needed, but running the ball, he had his outbursts, but nothing like we saw in the regular season. But yeah, I wasn't really surprised. I was surprised that the Chiefs took a safety in that last play. I don't know why you don't just punt the ball away, but I guess they were just trying to run the clock down. But I felt that was kind of surprising, but ultimately not really surprised with the outcome.
Yeah, neither am I. I thought, after the Texans went on a 10-minute touchdown drive to begin the second half, I thought, all right, we got ourselves a ball game, because they walked down the field and they were toying with the Chiefs the entire drive. I mean, they were picking up multiple third down conversions. They were running the ball extremely well. C.J. Stroud, threw it to the right guy. He didn't make a single mistake. And it looked like you were going to tie the game. And then Ka'imi Fairbairn missed the extra point, just like in the first meeting between these two teams. You had a chance to tie the game in the third quarter, and a missed extra point gave Kansas City all the momentum that they needed to pull away. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he only threw for 177 yards, but 117 of them went to Travis Kelce, even with a few sacks given up. And I mean, we can blame the refs and say, oh, they're protecting the Chiefs, they're protecting Patrick Mahomes. But you know what? Kansas City got flagged 4 times. Houston got flagged 8 times. We know that the best teams, they make the least amount of mistakes. They know what it takes to get the job done. And more importantly, they know that one single mistake or one single error could cause the team to fall apart. And Houston, blaming the refs and not holding themselves accountable for what happened. They just ran into a rut and they could never recover from that. I mean, CJ Stroud got sacked 8 times, 3 of them by George Karlaftis. And after that touchdown, they only settled for 2 points, which was the 2 pity ones that Kansas City gave them just to run out the clock. So, I mean, were the Chiefs perfect? No. But they did more than enough in all 3 phases. I mean, they started off the game with a huge kickoff return that set up an early field goal, and then they didn't turn the ball over. They minimized the penalties, and more importantly, when it was time for them to put the game away, they did that. And you know what? I think that the Chiefs were just overall the better team, pure and simple. But I don't know if you could say the same thing with this next matchup, because the Buffalo Bills, I don't know if I'm going to say this with a straight face. The Buffalo Bills beat the Baltimore Ravens 27-25. I was actually only 1 point off. I thought the score was going to be 27-24, but Buffalo was up 21-10 in the first half after a couple early turnovers from Lamar Jackson. Baltimore did its best to try to fight back, but a couple of failed 2-point conversions plus a fumble from Mark Andrews cost them a chance at victory. This is now the 6th time in 7 seasons that the Baltimore Ravens under Lamar Jackson have not made a conference championship appearance. The floor is yours.
Oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. I could go.
I shouldn't be laughing. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it's hard not to, right? I mean, gosh. I mean, first of all, I just want to say all the hate that Mark Andrews is getting, he doesn't deserve any of that, because without him, we wouldn't be where we are. Okay. I think he's one of the best tight ends in the league. I think he's up there with the Travis Kelce's, the Brock Bowers. I think he's up there. And barring the fumble and the drop 2-point conversion, he had a hell of a game. I think he was one of our top receivers for the game. Yeah. So I just want to get that out there before I go any deeper into this game, because I love Mark. And I know I'm saying that because I'm a fan, but he's a great dude and an even better football player. So I just want to get that out there before I say anything else about the game. So I am obviously sad. You guys know I'm a Ravens fan. That was a heartbreaking way to lose. But I watched Lamar Jackson interviews after the game, and, you know, I could tell he was super frustrated. He's tired of losing like this. But it all comes down to turnovers, like Colin was saying. I mean, the fact is we had 3 turnovers, right? And we still had a chance to tie the game and go in overtime. That just shows you how good we are, and obviously how good our defense and how much better our defense has gotten. I think our defense was heavily criticized throughout the year, obviously with some of our games, you know, where we give up 40 points or whatever, 30 points. Our defense wasn't the problem in this game. It was our offense. And as good as Josh Allen is and the Bills are, give them all the credit. They deserve it. I don't think they played that well. I think this game was ours to win and ours to lose. And we lost it because of ourselves. The strip fumble by Lamar Jackson, I mean, if he just takes the sack there and goes down, we have one of the best kickers in the NFL. I know he's been struggling a little bit, but we have one of the best kickers in the NFL. He could get us probably 3 points on that drive if we don't score a touchdown. Mark Andrews, if he doesn't fumble, he could have just literally gone down. Instead, he tried to do a juke move, which is still surprising to me. I know he's good at that move, but I mean, he's such a strong guy. He really should have just been able to hold on to the ball. But if you just take just those 2 plays away, or just the Mark Andrews play away, because we were driving, the Bills weren't stopping us on that drive.
No.
He just doesn't fumble the ball. If he just goes forward and goes down, I mean, I like our chances to score a touchdown there. And then at that point, you know, even if the Bills score, we don't have to score a 2-point conversion at the end of the game. Because on almost every drive we had, I think we had 1 drive where we didn't we had to punt, and it wasn't like it was a 4th down and long. But I think every other one of our drives, we either had a chance to score and turn it over, or we scored. So, I mean, for me personally, I know you might think I'm kind of biased. I'll wait to see your opinion on it, obviously. But I think the Bills, you know, were kind of playing nervous, and they knew that they were playing a better team. And I think they know that they're lucky that they got away with that win.
I want to go that completely far, but I will say this. You know, after the first 2 drives where both teams went down the field to score a touchdown, it was tied at 7-7. I thought, okay, we're getting the match that we wanted. A close, competitive grudge match, and it's going to come down to the wire. And in the end, it turned out to be that way. But at first, it wasn't, because Lamar Jackson on the next drive throws an arm punt of an interception to Taylor Rapp. And then on the next play, not only is the ball snapped incredibly high, but instead of just falling down on the ground, he tries to be a hero and tries to make something happen. And he gets strip sacked. Bills recover. They immediately score a touchdown after. I'm thinking, oh, good God, this is not going well. And the defense, they definitely struggled in the first half, because Josh Allen went 5 of 7. He scored a couple rushing touchdowns. James Cook was having his way, on the ground, 10 carries, 35 yards. And, they were 2 for 4 on third down. They had 155 total yards of offense. They made it into the red zone 3 times and succeeded all 3 of them. So the defense was on its heels for most of the first half, but then coming into the third quarter, they got their focus back. They got the edge. To your point, they weren't the biggest issue with the team, because if you told me that Josh Allen was only going to finish the game with 127 yards and they were going to only make the red zone once in the entire second half, I would say Ravens got this in the bag. They're going to the conference championship. And then the offense, they had their punches. Derrick Henry was running wild on one drive. Lamar Jackson was, showing the MVP potential that he always does, game in and game out. He finished the game with 254 yards. But there were 3 costly plays that all but sealed the deal. The first was not the Mark Andrews fumble, the first 2-point conversion, where the Baltimore Ravens had a chance to tie the game at 21. Why the hell is Derrick Henry not on the football field? Why is he on the sideline? I like Justice Hill. He is not a bad option. He's a good receiving back. He's been a reliable weapon for them over the past 5 or so years. But at least have Derrick Henry on the field as a decoy. Instead, you're having Lamar Jackson throw a batted pass in a tight coverage, and it just falls incomplete, and you're down by 2. And then on the next drive, Mark Andrews, instead of just at least trying to run full speed, just not having to worry about making a move or making something extra happen, or at least going down, he fumbles the football. A usual reliable tight end who has been a model of consistency and he's arguably the greatest Ravens tight end to ever play the game. Obviously, you've got Shannon Sharp and Todd Heap and am I missing somebody? Maybe Owen Daniels. I don't even know if you go that far. But the point is, he's up there. And he fumbles the ball, and it leads to 3 more Buffalo points. That's 10 points off of 3 turnovers, and you lose the game by 2. Because on the final 2-point conversion, after Lamar Jackson threw a dime to Isaiah Likely for a 25-yard pickup, huge clutch touchdown to make it a 2-point game. I don't mind the fact that you put the ball in Lamar Jackson's hands on that play, because the play was wide open. All he had to do was make the catch. The game would have been tied, and it falls through his hands. And Buffalo gets incredibly bailed out. And I wouldn't go so far as to say they were nervous or they knew that Baltimore was the better team. I just think that they couldn't adjust, and they couldn't slow Baltimore down when they absolutely needed to. And I'm going to be blunt with this. There might have been a lot of time if Mark Andrews had converted it, but there's no doubt that I thought it would have gone to overtime, because Baltimore's defense had Josh Allen contained through the final 30 minutes of play. And if Lamar Jackson got the ball in overtime, I think they would have won. But those 3 turnovers, they cost them. And that's why Lamar Jackson is now the James Harden / Aaron Judge of the National Football League. 2 guys who are generational talents that have won MVPs, that are exceptional athletes, and that they can ball. But when it's time to win, and when the lights shine just a little bit brighter, they don't live up to the hype. And not all of it was on Lamar, because Mark Andrews had the fumble and the drop. But over the past 8 years, right, or 6 years, I should say, he's been the common denominator with these playoff failures. 2 of them when he won MVPs. So that's something that I think he will eventually crush at one point in his career, because it's happened to all the greatest. Peyton Manning eventually broke through. Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco. I mean, I'm trying to think of someone off the top of my head. But the point is, that the upside is there. you just want, it's just every single year they just get in their own way. And until they finally stop doing that, all we're going to think of them as great regular season team, but a fraudulent pretender when it matters most. And I hate to say it because I like this team.
Yeah.
But let's get to the conference championship. Let's make our picks. Kansas City versus Buffalo. We all know who we want to win, but who do we think is going to get it done? The floor is yours.
Oh, man. I mean, what a playoff so far. I mean, all these games are so tough to predict. But kind of similar to my prediction with the Commanders and Eagles game, I'm going to ride with the hot team in the Buffalo Bills. You know, I think Josh Allen and them, you know, they're playing well. You know, they're playing the harder teams. And, you know, Kansas City, we've seen throughout the year, they've struggled to blow teams out. They've struggled to beat bad teams at home by a lot.
Yes.
And you could argue that a lot of their wins came from, you know, bad calls by referees or, like you said, refs kind of protecting them. You could argue that. So, I mean, for me, I know Kansas City's at home, and I know that they have Josh Allen's number, but I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills here because they are the hotter team. They're playing well. And I think Josh Allen has a little chip on his shoulder from the past couple years, past couple of matchups against Mahomes. And it's pretty hard to beat a team super consistently like they have been. But on the other hand, I mean, the Chiefs definitely have a chance to win. Obviously, they always have a chance to win. They have Patrick Mahomes. But
exactly
that connection with him and Kelsey, it's starting to heat up. So that's scary. So you never know. I mean, this game come out of the wire. Either team could win. This is ultimately a coin flip. But for me, I think I'm going to take the Bills. I'm going to take them 30-28 here on the road.
30-28. Well, you actually got nearly the same final score as I did because I got the Bills winning 31-28. And to me, I don't think the player under the most pressure is going to be Josh Allen because we've seen him do everything he could to try to win this game to win a game against the Kansas City Chiefs. We saw it in 2021 where he scored a go-ahead touchdown with 13 seconds left before the defense fell apart on the final drive of regulation and in overtime. So we know that Josh Allen is going to do whatever it takes to put the team on his back. My thing is, who's going to be the next to step up? You could say James Cook, but in the passing game, is it going to be Khalil Shakir? Is it Amari Cooper? Is it Dalton Kincaid? Somebody's got to step up and be able to help out Josh Allen and make sure that this offense stays on the right course because that Bills defense, it's not as good as they were over the last few seasons. They got a solid pass rush. You got Greg Rousseau, you got Von Miller, you got Ed Oliver. Linebacking core, you got Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard. They're fully healthy. So you know that the front seven is a solid unit, but in the secondary, they're not as good as they were in years past. I mean, they're banged up. That's number one. And number two, they got a lot of young and inexperienced guys that are now going up against the best quarterback in football right now with the best tight end in football and an offense that's led by the best head coach. So I think it's going to be a really close game. I think both teams are going to go back and forth. We know that Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, those matchups, they never disappoint. But Buffalo's got to get over the hump at some point, and I think they could do it. I think, listen, Peyton Manning did it against Tom Brady in his career in 2006, and I think this time it's Josh Allen's time. And I know I said that last year, but it's got to happen at some point. So, because like you said, this Chiefs team, it hasn't been able to win games convincingly. And when they have been able to do it, it's only been a one-score game heading into the fourth quarter. So they've had a hard time putting teams away like they have in years past. So give me the Bills 31-28. And I'm just hoping to God that we get the Super Bowl because if we get Chiefs versus Eagles, then it's going to be just as bad as Warriors versus Celtics in 2021. So, all right. That just about wraps it up. Thanks you all so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for additional content. Back next week for a conference championship recap. And then before you know it, it's going to be Super Bowl time. So hopefully we get the matchup we want, but wouldn't be surprised if we get the matchup we know is most likely going to happen. So see y'all next week. Have a great rest of your night. And